Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic, mm, mm, and today's topic, a Iraq national fraudulent illegal refugee scheme. Let me say that again. Today's topic, a Iraq national fraudulent illegal refugee scheme. See, the thing about it is, so many different cultures, ethnicities, etc., etc. They know that they can play so many types of mental, psychological switcher games upon uh, millions of African ancestry, Native Black people overall, right? Because they know already that they can sit there and just say, hey, you know what? We are people of color too, right? We are minorities too. And you know what they be doing when they be saying that? We know what they be doing inside. Right? That's what they do. They do it consistently because they know even when you got personnel that try to relate over some, not just true and fact, because you can have supremacy that can all make some type of white lie factualization without no context. They already know that. That's not a big thing to them to do that. So that's not nothing fantastic. Just to say something about facts, right? You got to have make sure you have context to it as well, right? And not foolish mental switchery tactics that they try to play, right? What I mean by that is that, say, for instance, you try to relay this over to certain types of American blacks overall about some reality that's heading toward the American blacks way continuously. This would quite a number would do.
Sorry, Kevin Bacon wasn't in Footloose.
What? Of course he was.
No, he wasn't. You lose.
Of course he was. He was the star.
Nope, you're wrong. Look it up.
I don't have to look it up. It's common knowledge. He was on the cover of People magazine when the movie. Everyone knows Kevin Bacon was a star of Footloose. It was a huge movie. He was the lead. No.
See, I know that it's hilarious when you see that, but it's some reality to that as well, because you relate information that that a person observes what's happening, right? Because there are so many people that are so many American blacks by the millions overall that allow personnel to have a little bit of melanin, right? A little bit of melanin in this type of conversation and topic to sit there and hide within the American black pain, right? But sit there, on the fringes of American blackism, right? Based upon melanation, and you got numbers of African ancestry Native blacks, right? That by the millions, with few percentage exceptions, allow personnel with a little bit of melanin to sit there and trick millions of American blacks overall with the people of color and minority-based witchery, right? That's what they continue to keep doing over and over and over, and it keeps succeeding over and over and over and over again. Watch this, as again in this topic, Iraqi national sentenced to 37 months. Excuse me. The topic is an Iraqi national fraudulent illegal refugee scheme. Now, related to that, let's get out into the particular show part. An Iraqi national, right, was sentenced to prison for basically a conspiracy to defraud a U.S. refugee program. Let me put this again. An Iraqi national, right, was sentenced to prison for conspiracy to defraud a U.S. refugee program. Mm. Millions of African descent native blacks don't realize what's heading toward an overallness amount of more American black pain. An Iraqi national, this particular name, was sentenced today, or at the time, should I say, was sentenced to, and this is, anyway, they were sentenced to 37 months in prison on a charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States related to his role in a scheme to defraud a U.S. refugee program or programs. This particular person that was 44 years old, obviously a very grown person, they pleaded guilty in January of 2022. This particular person is one of 3 defendants who were charged in an indictment that was unsealed on January 22nd, 2021. This particular indictment charged this particular main person and 2 other foreign nationals. One of those other 2 foreign nationals was 44 years old, and the other foreign national was 44 years old, right? In connection with a scheme to defraud the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. Let me say it again. Along with the main person and these 2 other foreign nationals, they were indicted in connection with a scheme to defraud the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. And in particular, the Iraq P2 program. The Iraq P2 program. Because it's not hilarious, right? It is atrocious on things like this, right? Because again, I'm not quite finished yet, but again, millions of African descent native blacks with a few percentage points that keep allowing people to utilize trick-based mental switchery words, right? And allow themselves to be, again, put into a generic people of color category and minority status. Okay? Over and over. So, continue with, in particular, the Iraq P2 program, which allows certain Iraqis to apply directly for refugee resettlement in the United States, which is a form of reparations and resources. Let me say it again. The Iraqi P2 program, which allows certain Iraqis to apply directly for refugee resettlement in the United States. Again, that is a type of what? Reparations with resources. But this system supremacy, the most brilliant mental manipulation force that has ever existed, can't seem to find no resource to specifically help American blacks. And you got numbers of various type of black political figures who know they are, with a few exceptions, but overallness ain't worth nothing because the system knows overall meaning are worth nothing, with few exceptions. So you hear people that didn't hear what I just said. I said overall, most are really ain't worth nothing. That ain't me just relaying. That ain't me just saying, oh, that's just my thought pattern on that. Supremacy knows this. Because again, just like when Harvard knows the black political figures, you know who they are, that make sure to legislate other programs or laws, should I say, for other types of cultures, et cetera, to help them, right? How many other refugee personnel that that through through little other programs and laws, etc., however it goes, are able to sit there and arrive to within this U.S. right under some type of program or programs, right? That who is paying for? Taxpayers' money. But American blacks can't seem to get no reparations at all. Unfortunately, there are so many internal problems with the American black. That's why there will never be any reparations. And I stand by this. Watch, there will never be reparations that's going to be provided to the American blacks. Because again, it's something about there are numbers of persons within the Panamese culture that continually eyeball the American black folks left and right, trying to see what they're doing, right? Just trying to eyeball them, right? It's like when they had the turbulence and atrocious Tulsa race riot. Now you hear on one side, the black residents in Tulsa, Oklahoma, were trying to mind their business, which they had their own businesses. They were sitting working, had their own post office, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on, right? Wouldn't ask for people for help, right? Because they knew back in those 20s, right? 30s, I'm just giving an example, 40s, 50s, well, excuse me, let's not go there. But back in those early 1900s, right, where what was still going on? Formal segregation laws. Now, this would have been before, obviously, in this topic, Iraqis. This would have been before Syrians. This would have been before the Vietnam War. This would have been before the Korean War, right? But again, American blacks continue overall to just be culturally segregated, right? Oh, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps all the time, while at the same time giggle, giggle, while they sit there and help other people get resources. Continuing, the main person previously pleaded guilty and was sentenced. When other personnel remains at large. According to the indictment and statement of facts agreed to by one of the main personnel as part of his guilty plea from approximately February 2016 until at least April of 2019, the three defendants, led by the main person, conspired to steal U.S. government records related to hundreds of USRAP applications, right? Which means, again, the Refugee Admissions Program. Again, USRAP, meaning Refugee Admissions Program. Okay? So they conspired to steal U.S. government records relating to hundreds of U.S. route applications. The main personnel was employed in some place in Jordan from 2007 to 2016 by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And one other personnel held a similar position at the U.S. Embassy in Russia. As part of their duties, both the defendants had access to State Department's worldwide refugee admissions processing system. Let me throw this out again. It says, as part of their duties, both defendants had access to the State Department's worldwide refugee admissions processing system called RAPS, WRAPS, a database containing sensitive, non-public information about refugee applicants and their family members, right? The main person who organized and led the conspiracy, and he relied on and paid the two different foreign nationals to steal RAPS, which again stands for Worldwide Refugee Admissions Processing System, which again is a database containing sensitive, non-public information about refugee applicants and their family members. Okay. So again, let's go back here. As outlined in the indictment and statement of facts, the theft of U.S. route records creates a number of risks to public safety and national security while imposing significant costs on the U.S. government, its taxpayers, and otherwise legitimate refugee applicants negatively impacted by the scheme. Because it's not about the ones that are trying to come over legally, right? This is ones talking about illegally, right? Because this thing about let me go back just a little bit ago. The main person that organized and led the conspiracy, and he relied on and paid those two other foreign nationals to steal raps records and information so that that main person could assist applicants in gaining admission to the United States through fraudulent means. Ooh. And again, this is what many of them do. They sit back laughing because you heard what I just read you, right? This particular main person and the two foreign nationals, right, that he relied on and paid those two foreign nationals to steal Ralph's records and information so that that main person could assist applicants in gaining admission to the United States through fraudulent means. So that he and those two different people could assist applicants in gaining admission to the United States through fraudulent means. See, even when you say things like or relate things like this reality, you'll still have personnel that are in such denial. And for myself, I don't even sit there and waste a piece of half breath trying to convince somebody of what is heading toward the American blacks overall, which is the demographical onslaught. They finished them, one of many moves that are going to be used to finish off the American blacks overall. And many still have no idea what's heading toward them. Because myself, like when somebody tries to play little mental switchery tactics, right? I'm like this. You say, what again? What do you like when you got personnel that they'll be like, well, but people they trying to come over to the yes and start better lives and all this kind of stuff. I'm just like this again. Because I'm not trying to listen to some half piece of crap white lie witchery. The American blacks have been going through generational black pain again for generations. There's no other cultures that compare to the pain, the cultural pain that the American blacks have had to endure and still endure for generations. You got personnel that just arrived over here a few years ago in demographical numbers. Others came over here in a generation or less. Others, couple of generations, right? With very few exceptions from many other cultures didn't even exist in this country of America in the 1800s, let alone 1700s. All right? Because the three largest demographics in the United States for generations were the Caucasians, or the personnel within the predominant culture, what we call Native Americans, and three, the American blacks. Those are the only main three cultures before many other cultures even arrived within this country. And no other culture, background, and certainly not in terms of lifestyle category, which is a different topic in itself, right? Because show where there was a term lifestyle categories being removed from either the continent of the ancient Kabbalah of Africa, or was mixed in what we want to call the Native Americans, which is a different concept in itself, by the black native that's already here in the country. But show me, but let's not even go that direction, but show whether in terms of lifestyle category personnel were sitting there being put on plantations left and right for generations, and then broken up and being sold off at the whim of the masters, of the disgusting, atrocious masters. And then these people are so atrocious, even quite a number of personnel in the present day, when you got numbers of personnel within certain parts of predominant culture that'll play this little disgusting game of saying, well, well, Africans so love Africans. I'm like, food, which Africans? You do realize Africa is a continent. So which part of Africa are you talking about? And they make sure not to talk about what we call the Native Americans, how many of them were sitting there plumping and pillaging and grabbing up and assaulting other different tribes. They don't talk about that. And they certainly don't talk about numbers of personnel within predominant culture in different countries that were, that were grabbing up, assaulting, putting them in some kind of bondage themselves, right? Not based upon race, obviously not at all, but based upon some kind of bondage and situations like that. They don't talk about that, right? But they're the one that just make it seem like that. Oh, just the Africans were selling the Africans, right? No accountability whatsoever by personnel within the predominant culture. The ones that know I'm talking about that start these programs and laws of hatred toward the American blacks. And they're not talking, the only thing about talking about what about the Native Americans? You get your feelings hurt. You get your feelings hurt. Because again, what did I sit there and tell you when they start trying to play these little silly games? So, you're talking about during the Civil War, and especially after the Civil War, when you start having numbers of what we call native tribes that still was and kept enslaved black folks that was supposed to have been free after the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, right? That was still supposed to be free. Or let me phrase that was supposed to have been free after the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, right? After the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, that was supposed to ban slavery, right? You still have, however, numbers of what we call Native Americans that did not want to let go of their enslaved black folks. And again, this is before many other cultures even existed in the country of America. So again, I don't play that kind of silly game because here's the thing about it, and about to close up the show, and especially this system has so much hatred toward the black male, the American black male. Overall, I'm not talking about sellouts or gullible ones, unfortunately, that still don't realize that they're being used, right? But this is what they want, they like for this is what they like for the American black male to be like. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you what they like the American black male to be like. You see that? Now I want you to show where they were doing these other cultures like that and showing them like this guy named Stephen Fetchit. I want you to show me where, or show yourselves where. But there's other people from different cultures that might be the first time of hearing about this, and credit given to the ones out there who will be listening to this show, maybe down in the near future, long-term future, right? That's, oh, wow, I didn't know that it was like that. Oh, yes, it definitely was on that. But regardless, for the person who listen to this who do not have a ulterior motive of trying to play little discussing games, right? I do thank you for tuning into the show, listening to this. So again, I really do appreciate the taking time out to listen to this show. I'm your host, CP.